Alright, so hey guys, welcome back to another video. Hope you guys are all doing well. Today we're taking a look over the NZXT website. They just updated a bunch of their PCs with some newer hardware, so today we're taking a look into that. But before we get into the video, make sure that if you do end up enjoying, to make sure to hit that like button, and if you guys want to see more, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Alright, so off the bat, let's start with their starter series. So this is NZXT's kind of quote-unquote budget offering that they have. This is going to be basically their lowest end systems that they're going to offer throughout their entire lineup. That consists of the Starter Plus, and the Starter Pro. Now, personally, for the price points, I think that this is a bit much, especially for a starter PC. I think $1,000 is a lot for people to kind of first get into PC gaming. I know graphics cards are pretty expensive right now, but right now the market's getting a lot better and better, and I really don't think that they should be charging $1,000 for the hardware that we're going to be having in here. Now, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Let's actually look at the hardware for each of these. So NZXT kind of has a pretty nice layout. I'll give them that. So between the PCs, you can pretty much just see all the different stuff in the performance levels that they're going to have on these PCs and their price ranges. So you got the Starter Plus, Starter Pro, and then it comes down to all of their specs. So in terms of their trustworthiness on a lot of these things, it's actually pretty good. So in terms of 1080p and 1440p, the FPS ranges on these things are actually pretty accurate from what I've seen. And same thing with both of these PCs, so I'll give them credit for that. But when it comes to the price to performance, that's kind of where these PCs lack. So the first problem is that this one was not updated. So this is pretty much the same system as there was before. So you have an i3 9100F. So for those of you guys who just don't know what hardware is based off in the name, this is a 4-core, 4-thread CPU that's about 2-3 years old. And because of that, it does not perform very well in games like Modern Warfare. As you guys can pretty much see, Modern Warfare is only at 62 FPS, and that's at 1080p. If you want to bump it up to 1440p, it's much lower. And Grand Theft Auto, which is a notoriously CPU-heavy game, it's at 35 FPS. So your CPU is going to be a pretty big bottleneck, and even then, the GPU itself is not very good. The GTX 1650 was never really meant to be a AAA gaming graphics card. It was meant to be kind of a low-power solution to a lot of people just wanting to kind of do some games or just some light graphics workloads. It's really not meant to be a $1,000 system, but for some reason it is. Again, I understand that GPUs are a little bit expensive right now, but we are kind of on the downcline, and hopefully later on that this is going to be knocked down to around, I'd hope, around $600. And they definitely need to upgrade the CPU to something like a 10th gen i3. Now let's talk about the Starter Plus. So this has got a Core i5 10400F, so this one is actually updated. So the CPU is now a much better one. So it used to be the 9400F. This one's a bit better because we now have hyper-threading, which is going to give it a lot better performance in different games. So in GTA, you're getting 49 FPS. Modern Warfare, you're getting a good increase as well. And you're also getting a pretty decent increase to your GPU. So a 1660 Super is a good bit better than just a normal 1650. You're getting a pretty decent card in general. This is probably going to be the starting realm of where you can actually kind of stream and game off of the system. But again, in terms of money, it's a lot of money. We'll kind of get into the comparisons after we take our first initial look at these PCs. And then for another $100, you basically just get a step up in terms of your SSD and your graphics card, which is great. I think that that's kind of worth it, but a 2060 as of right now is still a bit lower. I would like to see a 2060 Super, but again, we'll kind of take a look at our comparisons right here. Now, before we get into comparisons, I just want to say that all the PCs that we're going to be comparing these particular ones to are going to be on Best Buy, and they're going to be readily available. That was kind of my criteria for that. It didn't have to be on Best Buy, but again, I've been talking a lot of good things about Best Buy and their price and performance, and I just find it a pretty easy place to find gaming PCs. So yeah, we're going to be taking a look at Best Buy and what kind of things that they offer within the same price range and how much better they are. All right, so we're going to be comparing the starters, so just kind of remember the overall specs and stuff like that, and we'll take a look at it. So this one is going to be your $1,000 PC at Best Buy. So you get a Lenovo Legion Tower 5 AMD gaming desktop. So you're getting a Ryzen 7 5800 with 16 gigs of RAM, an Nvidia GeForce GTX 1660 Super, and a pretty decent storage configuration. For those of you guys who have any idea what this is spec-wise, this is going to absolutely blow the starter out of the water, mainly because your CPU is going to be absolutely insane. So instead of the 4 cores and 4 threads that the CPU has, this one is going to have 8 cores and 16 threads. So that's 4 times more threads on this CPU, so it's going to be able to do a lot more work. Overall, just the overall single core performance of these CPUs are absolutely amazing. These AMD 5th gen CPUs are super good. So I always recommend these to most people. And then in terms of the graphics card, you're getting a 1660 Super. which is basically the next tier on this. For, again, I think this is what, $50 more. So yeah, it really doesn't make sense for anybody to buy the starter series from NZXT, and this is not a bad case. I definitely think that Lenovo makes some pretty quality stuff. I think this is probably going to have pretty decent airflow compared to what the NZXT Starter PC is going to have. In terms of cooling, it should be great. Alright, so when it comes to our comparison of the Starter Plus, we're going to be taking a look at the HP Omen 30L. Now, if any of you guys know a lot about your hardware, you're going to see that this is actually worse than the Lenovo Legion one. So the CPU and this is just a generation older than this one. It still has the same amount of cores, still the same amount of threads. It just is going to have lower clock speeds and a lower overall like kind of performance level. But because of that, you are also going to be able to get a better GPU. You're getting a pretty decent storage configuration. And in general, I think it's going to be a great PC for most people, and it absolutely blows the Starter Plus out of the water. So you're getting 2 more cores than this CPU. Then you're also getting a 2060 instead of a 1660 Super, and you're getting a pretty decent storage configuration compared to that one. Alright, now the comparison for the Starter Pro, this is $1,400, or a $1,400 PC is going to be the CyberPower Gamer Extreme. This one has again, the same 6-core, 12-thread CPU with a 2060, with 16 gigs of RAM and a 1TB SSD. This one is going to have a 8-core CPU, which is a new 11th gen Core i7, so it's going to be pretty dang good. It's going to be a good bit better than what was on the Starter Pro, and then you're also going to be getting a RTX 3060, which is basically a generation better than this one, and the 3060 is a great card in general. I love the 3060. It's probably one of the best ones that Nvidia's came out with in a long time. And then you're getting a 1TB hard drive and a 500GB SSD. Honestly, I think the system absolutely blows the Starter Pro out of the water. So with my general opinion, I just would say not to go with the Starter series, even though they updated the CPUs to make them a little bit better. I would still not go with them, just because in terms of price to performance, they're not that great. And if you think the NZXT cases look nice, then just buy an NZXT case and swap the stuff over. These cases aren't anything special. They just have a kind of a cool, I guess, aesthetic, but they don't have great airflow, and they don't do anything overly better than most other cases. So now let's check out their streaming PC. So this is a $2,000 system that's supposed to be able to stream. And my big problem with this one is just that they're not going with a CPU that's decent enough to actually stream off of it. If I'm a streamer, I would rather stream off of my CPU than off of my GPU, just because in general, if you stream off your GPU, you're going to be getting less frames and stuff like that. So if you are a person who is really competitive and you want to stream off of the same system, I would go with a beefier CPU than with a beefier GPU. And NZXT pretty much went the opposite with this. It's still a good CPU, it's still great, but it's still a Ryzen 5 5600X, and for $2,000, that's a lot of money for a $300 CPU. And in terms of the graphics card, you're getting a 3070, which again is a great graphics card. I know that these are expensive right now, and I'm sure that's probably why this thing costs as much as it does. But there are better offers out there, and in terms of memory, you're getting 16 gigs, which I don't understand that either. If you're doing a streaming PC, most of the time these people are going to be content creators and are going to be professionals. I would at least like that to be 32 gigs of RAM, because if you're going to be editing those videos, if you're going to be doing a bunch of different tasks while you're streaming and doing stuff, you're going to want more RAM. So in terms of streaming, I don't think that this thing is actually a quote-unquote streaming PC. I think this is just like just kind of a slogan that they put on their PC just to have that higher price point available. And so this comparison, we're going to go to the CyberPower Supreme Gaming Desktop. This is, again, the same $2,000 price point. You're getting a Ryzen 7 5800X, so it's going to be a good bit better than what this streaming PC has. Again, this is only a Ryzen 5. This is a Ryzen 7, so you're going to get 2 more cores and 4 more threads than this particular CPU. Or sorry, not that one, this one. So you're going to get 2 more cores, 4 more threads than this particular CPU. So it's going to be a good bit better. In terms of graphics card, it's going to be the exact same thing. RTX 3070. Then you're going to have 1TB SSD, 16 gigs of RAM as well. But the reason why I like this one a lot more is that it is going to be around the same price point. It's actually a little bit cheaper. And in terms of case aesthetic, it's basically the same thing as an NZXT case. But in terms of the processing power of the system, it's going to be a good bit better because you're getting a Ryzen 7 for less money. So that's just kind of my reasoning behind that. And I just wouldn't buy a streaming PC in general, just because they charge a lot of money for that stuff, when in reality you shouldn't be charging that much. Alright, now we're taking a look at the Streaming Pro. I really don't want to do comparisons with this thing just because it's just kind of whack. In terms of 3090 builds, there's not a whole lot out there, and what I have found is that this is actually okay priced, but not really, just because it has that same exact CPU in it. For a system that's costing you $3,000, again, I don't understand why only 10% of that budget is going into the CPU. I get it that a 3090 is a pretty expensive card, but I just don't understand their configuration standpoint. I don't know why you wouldn't go with maybe a 5800X or a 5900X and go with a lower end GPU, because I know this 3090 is driving up the cost of this PC by a good amount. And again, you're going with 16 gigs of RAM. For again, $3,000, you're only getting 16 gigabytes of RAM for something that's supposed to be there for productivity professionals, for people who are streaming, for people who are editing clips, for people who are making content. You're going to need 32 gigs of RAM if you're going to be editing any sort of high resolution footage. So I really don't understand their decision to go with a super high end GPU. But again, just kind of shelf everything else when it comes to in terms of quality and in terms of performance. And again, I still have that same problem with this as being a super high-end system for a case that is going to be costing you around $60. I know NZXT has nicer cases. I'm not a huge fan of NZXT cases just because the airflow is absolutely horrendous on these things. I wish that they would go with their, instead of their H500, I would probably go with an H700, because you're going to get more airflow. Again, I don't know the naming scheme. I'm sure it's just, I'll put it on screen, whatever one I'm talking about. But again, in terms of airflow, these things aren't good. And so for that 3090, it's going to absolutely bake inside of the system, because you're only getting two entry fans in terms of what you can get pulled through, and then you're getting one exhaust fan for the CPU. So when it comes down to it, the 3090 sucks in like 300 watts of power. So those two front fans aren't going to be enough to suck in enough air to keep that thing cooled within a reasonable level. Now, I'm sure it's technically within thermal limits, but nobody wants their GPU to be sitting at 90 degrees Celsius, just because it's going to reduce the life of that GPU, and because it's supposed to be a high-end system. So I would assume that the cooling would be better. Again, I'm just not a fan of the way that they've picked everything else around it. I don't think they should just go with a high-end GPU just because it's a high-end GPU and just leave everything else to crap. Now, H1 Mini, I really don't have a whole lot to say about this one. I actually don't think this is too bad. When it comes to most other companies out there, there's not a whole lot of very, very small form factor ITX systems like this. Now, NZXT is pretty much one of the only companies that offers these small cases that still build systems within it. I know Fanatics has some pretty decent small form factor ITX cases, but again, Fanatics doesn't make systems within those cases. So if you're looking for a pre-built system within one of these very, very small cases, just know that because there are a very low amount of people that make them, I couldn't find anybody that was somewhat competitive with these guys, just because it's pretty much just NZXT and Corsair that are the two companies that are making these small form factor ones. So just understand that if you're really looking for a small form factor system, you're going to be paying a good bit more money than I think most people should. But when it comes to the specs, I don't think it's terrible. Again, you're still paying $2,500 for a system with a 3070 in it, which I'm not a huge fan of, but you're still getting a pretty decent CPU. You're getting 11900K. You're still getting 16 gigs of RAM. It's just pretty standard stuff. I don't think it's anything great, but I don't think it's anything terrible. Now, when it comes to the Creator PC, this is probably the one I like the least. It pretty much brings together everything I was saying about the PC, their airflow, and the selection beforehand. The Creator PC is just not one of my favorites. So if you're looking to create, right, if you're someone who's looking to edit videos, again, if you're looking to stream and stuff like that, first off, you're going to RAM, you're going to want a system that is very reliable and is running cool, and you're going to want a CPU that's really nice, because when it comes down to it, when you're scrubbing video, when you're rendering, when you are doing a bunch of stuff, you want a super nice CPU. Now, I'm not saying that the 11900K is not a good CPU. Of course, it is an absolutely amazing CPU, but there are better offerings out there, and it's not like NZXT is shy to go and buy an AMD Ryzen CPU because they have them in their other systems. But when it comes down to it, this is only an 8-core CPU, and AMD offers up to 16 cores, so double the amount of cores. And when you're paying $4,000 for a system, I think you should at least have one of the highest in offering content creation CPUs in your system. Now again, you have a 3090 in there, which I think is fine for this price point. For $4,000, you better be getting a 3090. And in terms of RAM, how much do we get here? What's the capacity here? If this is 16 gigs, I'm gonna be very upset, but I hope, I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm gonna say this is 32 gigs, because if this is not 32 gigs, I don't know why anybody would ever consider buying this PC. There's already enough problems with it. But I'm just going to give them the benefit of the doubt. This is going to be 32 gigs of RAM, because I just can't find the actual amount here. And that's another thing that they need to fix, because if you're buying a system that's $4,000, you better know for sure how much RAM is in that system. Now, in terms of storage, it looks fine. I mean, you're getting a 1TB SSD, 4TB hard drive. I would wish you'd have some more SSD storage, just because, again, you're paying $4,000 for the system. Which is, again, a lot of money. And then my last and final problem is just the cooling solution. I don't understand NZXT's approach to a lot of their builds, especially a $4,000 PC, because if we just take a look here, let's go into peripherals here. Let's go into, actually here, let's go into components, so cases. So this is the H710. This is the one that I was talking about. It's not great airflow, because you still have this blocked off side, but you get this side ventilation on everything, and you're getting these 3 fans up top, 3 fans in the front, and 1 fan in the back. For the Creator PC, you're getting 1 fan on the top, 1 fan in the back, 2 fans in the front. And the reason why this is somewhat of a problem is because both of the fans that are meant for intake are both blowing through to blow hot air into the system, right? So cold air is being sucked in from the outside and blown in and turned into hot air when it goes through the radiator. Because the CPU is a pretty power hungry CPU, it is just going to blow hot air into the system. There's not really going to be any cold air that is going into the system, because both of these 2 fans are just for exhaust. They're just there to blow out all of the hot air. When you have an 11900K, then it's going to be saturating this 240mm radiator, and then a 3090 that is going to be blowing a ton of heat. If you're pushing this thing to its limits, this thing is going to thermal throttle, I can pretty much guarantee you. So again, I don't understand NZXT's choice into buying these worst cases. I get it that you just want to move inventory, and a lot of times people just like the aesthetics, but when it comes down to it, you have a better case. You have it on your own site. I don't know why you wouldn't use that case on your highest end system that you sell on your website. For people who don't want to customize the PC, for people who just want the top end stuff, I don't get it. I don't understand the mindset to just not going up to your highest end case. I just don't get that. All right, now let's talk about their build feature, because I think this is probably one of the biggest things that are going to be drawing people in. So they do have some new CPUs. They have some new stuff here. So I built kind of a mock system here. And this is just a pretty generic one. Now, I'm sure if you want to change stuff around, I'm sure you could get better value stuff. But when it comes down to it, I've never really thought of NZXT as one of the better building a PC, like a custom PC company. And the main reason is, I think, pricing. Again, I think that NZXT thinks that they're more of a premium company than they are. And I think that there are many other companies that do it better. So one of my favorite companies that I like to talk about when people ask about custom stuff is CLX. Now, CLX, I think, is not a very well-known company in the industry. I've talked to them, I've done reviews on their stuff, and again, I really like the build quality and the people that work there. In terms of pricing, their pricing is really good. So this is the exact same system. So you have an i5 10600K, which is the actually, let me close this tab, which is the exact same CPU on here, 10600KF. So it's actually a bit better because you have integrated graphics. So this is a 10600K. Same RTX 3070. Now I'm sure this is probably going to be a lower end variant than the Aurorus Master on here, but I personally think that I would rather have the option of getting a lower end 3070, because again, 3070 is not crazy power hungry, so I don't know why you need a Gigabyte Aurorus Master. Then we have actually a better power supply on here. Let me see if I can find it. So you get a 750 watt Game DS power supply. So when that comes down to it, it's going to be more powerful. It's again the same efficiency. It's the same bronze efficiency, because you just get 100 more watts of power. You're getting a 120mm radiator. You're getting the same amount of RAM. You're getting a 32 gigabytes of the G.Skill Trident Z memory. In terms of storage, you're getting a 1TB NVMe drive. You're getting a Z590 MSI Pro Wi-Fi, which isn't the exact same thing, but again, it's gonna be around the same thing. I couldn't find that exact one on here, so I picked like a pretty high-end motherboard. And then again, in terms of case, I think that this case is a lot better. This is a P400A Fantex case. And then everything else, again, everything else on here is the exact same. If you guys haven't seen, the price here is $2138. When I go over to the NZXT BLD system, it's $23.13. So you're paying around $200 more for whatever reason, just for the NZXT badge. And these guys have a really good warranty system. These guys have great customer support. Again, I just don't understand the loyalty towards NZXT and the reasoning to go to these guys, even though there are other people out there, there are other systems out there that you can buy from that are usually better. Now again, the only PCs that I really like here is just the H1 Mini. There have been problems with them, but that's the only one I think is somewhat reasonable to buy from their system. Everything else, in terms of my opinion, I don't think is great. So yeah, I know that's a fairly critical talk about NZXT. I don't think that they're a bad company. I just think when it comes down to it, you need to work on pricing, and I think you need to work on your ideas between what you need to configure with your PC, because a lot of times it just doesn't make sense. I think you need to change your case selection on a lot of your PCs, because especially when you're going high end, I don't think you should still be using the $60 case that you sell to everybody else. Alright, so again, that's about it. If you guys want to see more content, make sure to hit that subscribe button. If you guys want to help me out, you guys can leave a like on the video, leave a comment down below if you liked it, disliked it, tell me what you liked, tell me what you didn't like about the video. Again, I'm completely open to everything. And if you guys want to go and talk with me, talk with the community, you guys can go and check out our Discord channel down in the description. Thanks again for watching. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to come and watch one of my videos, and hopefully I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.